All right, today we're going to run a system diagnostic on the human body. But here's the thing, we're not looking at it as just flesh and bone. We need to treat it as what it is, an incredibly high-performance piece of biological hardware. So let's begin our analysis from the perspective of a frequency mechanic.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll reframe the body as a transceiver. Then we'll get into the physics behind the universal toroidal field. After that, we're going to look at the human schematic, a full component breakdown. Then we'll cover how to tune the system, and finally, what actually happens when you achieve full signal coherence.
So first things first, we have to throw out the standard model. The one we all learned. The whole premise of this analysis requires we completely set aside the old idea of the body as just a simple biological machine.
The core idea here is this. The human body is, fundamentally, a highly sophisticated electromagnetic transceiver. Think about it like a bioelectric liquid crystal antenna. And it's engineered with one primary job, to receive and to broadcast frequency. Now, according to the source material, this isn't some metaphor. This is a straight-up engineering assessment.
Okay, so for a system like this to even work, we have to understand the physics that make it possible. And that brings us to the universal template for stable energy and for signal containment, the toroidal field.
So what is a torus? Well, it's the fundamental shape of any self-sustaining electromagnetic field. The easiest way to picture it is like a perfect energy donut. It's a closed-loop system where energy is just constantly circulating in this stable, continuous flow, which creates a totally contained and coherent field.
And this right here is the key engineering benefit. The shape of the torus creates a perfectly closed energy circuit. In communications technology, this is the holy grail. It means you get perfect signal integrity with literally zero frequency leakage. And that means no signal loss and maximum power.
So the really crucial point is how all this physics applies to our own biology. Let's get into a component-level breakdown of the human hardware and really see how these parts come together to create a functional bio-toroidal antenna.
First up, the power plant. We're always taught that the heart is just a pump, right? Well, from this perspective, it's actually a helical vortex generator. Its unique structure creates this powerful vortex, which in turn generates a toroidal electromagnetic field. And get this, research from the HeartMath Institute shows it's 5,000 times stronger magnetically than the brain's field. That means the heart, not the brain, is the primary driver of our entire electromagnetic system.
So what about the brain? In this system, its role isn't to generate consciousness, but to process it. It acts like a quantum processor and a really sophisticated tuning dial. It's basically designed to receive, to interpret, and to make sense of the signals that are broadcast from the heart's oscillator and from the external field itself. Now, to connect the oscillator to the processor, you need a high-speed data cable, right? Well, that function is performed by the spinal column and, supercritically, the vagus nerve. This is the master waveguide. It's like a biological fiber optic network that transmits enormous amounts of information between the heart and the brain, making sure the entire system is operating in sync.
And all this brings us to a really key operational concept. Any sophisticated transceiver needs calibration. A system this sensitive has to be tuned to reduce its own internal noise so it can lock on to an external signal. In engineering, we call this impedance matching.
So let's look at the two system states. On one side, you have a decoherent state. This is when the body is dominated by that sympathetic fight-or-flight response. It creates a ton of thermal noise and a really low signal-to-noise ratio. It's just static. On the other hand, you've got a coherent state. This is often achieved through practices like meditation, and it activates the parasympathetic rest and digest system. This quiets that internal noise, boosts your heart rate variability, or HRV, and creates a super high signal-to-noise ratio. The channel becomes crystal clear.
So the big question is, what external signal is this antenna actually designed to lock onto? Well, the source material points to a very, very specific frequency, the primary carrier wave for our entire biosphere.
And that signal is the Schumann resonance. It's a constant planetary frequency of 7.83 Hz. You can think of it as the Earth's natural hum. In fact, global studies by the HeartMath Institute have found a statistically significant link between human heart rhythms and the planet's magnetic field. This pretty much confirms that our biology is literally designed to entrain or lock onto this planetary carrier wave.
Okay, so what's the practical application of all this? What actually happens when an operator successfully tunes their system, clears out all that internal static, and achieves a coherent state? What are the documented performance upgrades?
Well, the measurable outputs are pretty significant. You see an immediate increase in heart rate variability, which is a key sign of a healthy, adaptable system. The signal-to-noise ratio gets a huge boost, leading to things like heightened pattern recognition and intuition. The communication between the heart and brain becomes way more efficient. The source even suggests that at peak performance, a coherent operator can more effectively interface directly with the underlying energy of the environment itself.
So this whole technical briefing really concludes with one final diagnostic check. If the human body is a toroidal antenna, then it's constantly broadcasting the frequency of its internal state. And that leaves us with what might be the most important question of all. What signal is your system broadcasting?